The disaster. A cry of happiness filled the sky, as the disaster was now behind. On the beach, people danced with joy. A sense of relief filled every girl and boy. In particular, 8 friends could thrive, because with grace they were still alive, especially since one of them happened to be the very skilled U.S. Secretary. Several days before their lively encounter, the secretary was picked up by his friends in a helicopter. "How are you, Dave?" a security girl asked. "Well, I'm fine, but my moment of relaxing has passed." "Never mind that. The president has called a conference." I nearly leapt out of my office. Soon enough, the helicopter began to descend. Dave walked off and met up with his friends. The auditorium was now filled with clamor. Everyone seemed worried about some impending disaster. The president went to take a stand. The secretary was sitting at his right hand. The president immediately began his important speech, but was soon interrupted by a roar from the beach. Suddenly, without warning, the president collapsed down. The sound of a gunshot began to resound. But the sky turned black and the ocean thundered toward the ground. The assassin escaped and the auditorium went into lockdown. Eventually, the storm had started to end, and Dave looked around for his friends. The town was flooded and underwater, but then Dave realized he had to find his daughter. He tried to open the door and brave the flood, but behind him he heard a thud. He looked over and saw his friends standing proud. They told him that they were going with him into town. All around was water and crying birds. Agony was all that Dave and his friends heard. They continued amongst the water and rubble until Dave recognized his home amongst the bubbles. He said to his friends that he would go in alone, and he cried with joy after seeing his daughter survived in his home. He was filled with joy, then suddenly fear, as the telephone rang in his ear. But his fear worsened as something approached the door, and his friends were around no more. Dave tried to escape with his daughter while he had time, but his shoulder had hit the wind chime. He had scrambled to get into his car, but the scary assailant was not far. Dave put the car into drive, yet suddenly a car skidded nearby. Dave's car had gotten into a crash. An ambulance siren had started to pass. Dave tried to get him and his daughter away, as the ambulance was not safe that day. They ran into a dank old alley and were suddenly surrounded by hovering bodies. The drone spoke the voice of his friends. They said a submarine could save him from what might be the end. Dave saw his friends at the submarine. The vessel departed and dove down deep. Dave and his daughter huddled close together as land was enveloped by a second wave of disastrous weather. A mysterious figure arrived and laughed. A passenger screamed. Dave and his daughter wondered what it could be. Their thoughts were interrupted by a thundering gun. When the assassin showed up, Dave tried to run. Out of nowhere, Dave's friend shot the guy with a laser, but the ship was ruptured and they began to quiver. Yet the passengers were able to escape in pods. On the ocean surface, Dave grasped a flare and shot. Well, I hope you enjoyed that narrative poem I created. Have a nice day.